Okay, I was sent a link by somebody and asked what I thought about this, and I gave a simple one sentence answer to it, and dot 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 connecting two sentences together like I do sometimes, and I think that's just way too vague. In fact, so I looked into this and picked up on it on this GodSelf, and in just looking at the pictures alone, I've now spent over 3.5 hours ogling in my own mind and making the connections that I'm going to try to relay to you. And I also want to preface it somewhat with a few concepts before we even start. I know a lot of people don't like this method that I do somehow, but I can't do it in any other way. I've got to speak my way through it, and I feel like being vague is terrible. Sometimes I say things in my videos like, and things, and I end up having, whenever I look back at the video, I can remember that at that time I am loaded up with thoughts, 2 or 3 thoughts that I could go off on left field on a branch right now. And so just to kind of climb over this hill and get past it and push on like a Heisman Trophy, I just say and things and kind of fidget it through it real quick. I don't like that I do it in any way, but what's odd is I know that at that moment I could go, hold on a second, world, separate that. Now let me put in this thing that means and things, and it's all these parts of other videos that I've shown before, some esoteric symbolism and things like that. It depends on the concept and what I'm talking about at the time, but I'm not making this video to apologize in any way, but just to try to give an explanation, and that I do try to stay on a tree of thought, but there are too many branches sometimes to the tree, and I know that I can't describe every branch on the tree, but if you're down on the ground looking at it and I'm climbing that tree and I get on this branch, I can stand up and shake this on this limb, and you'll see that this certain set of leaves are going crazy instead of others, and I can go looky here and check out way over here. Now look over here and see how it looks the same as this over here, and try to make connections. And the whole time it's really like pieces of a web, as I've described before. So let's see if I can get into this somewhat and make some connections that I've tried to show you in so many different ways. But in some ways I've been vague enough to never actually say this as a straight out statement. And listen to me whenever I say this. I figured out a long time ago that it seems, and then it's been all but verified, that these people of North America had symbolism that these people in the old world had, and they had attained it before they even came across during the end of the last ice age. And it shows in its development separate and alone from others, like in here, that the middle picture is a Mexican pyramid, and it shows a symbology that's not shown on the world in the timing that we're looking at, for we can find going all the way back to Göbekli Tepe, and people doing stonemason work, things that look like Stonehenge, sun circles, cosmic sun circles, and things, and actually neater almost to me than Stonehenge and its colossal size and development is these circles. And while it doesn't have all this multiple circle in one thing, it's got separate circles, and it seems like they have 30 to 50 of them. I believe when they undercover it all, that all of them aren't actually that, and there are other domiciles and things like that that go on. But it's not really a place for living. Anyhow, we see this Göbekli Tepe, and then out of that area in Catalhoyuk and stuff, these people that had started a certain thing. But this, now we're looking at something like 6,000 and 7,000 years ago, 6,500, and that key point that's there. And we look at key points in time. But this goes back way before this, and we're finding these people coming into South America and into the Americas date well over the time dating of Clovis people. And I've showed a lot of pre-Clovis type things and so on. But whenever they come over, they end up with this same ideal of making these pyramids. Now, some people do, and some of those old worlders do. Isn't that amazing? And the pyramids are very much like each other. If we take off the Great Pyramid and it's smooth facing, when we look at this is a step pyramid. And this is a step pyramid. And here's one in Cambodia. But they're not showing ziggurats. And if we looked at a ziggurat and tried to compare it, you would almost say it's like a combination of all three of these things. And it is amazing that there are cultures that far apart that have this same symbology. And if it was just one thing, there's a concept in science known as convergence. It's where, okay, in studying biology and everything, one easy example that I had was snakes. And we're going to go into that. So, okay, here's a connective. Snakes. There's a green vine snake in the Amazon, in South America, that is identical to one that's in the Congo. And it takes a snake scientist, literally, to be able to discern which one is which. Yet they are not related in any way. They come from separating trees from each other. They are not the same thing in variation. And oh, it's a black racer, and oh, it's a black racer, or oh, it's this type and that type. And there can be convergent types where there's camouflage on an asp and on a death adder and on a viper and things. And that's one simplistic idea. We're not looking at that. We're looking at to where they come out to be the exact thing. Now, convergence can happen in that way, but for it to happen into a cultural type thing seems it's odd, right? So let's look at the concept of here. Because we all look at the same sky, we might all develop the same type of cosmic ideals. And we might all figure out that this sun and moon go through different things and cycles and end up becoming the seasons of the year, but it takes a certain snap and people paying attention and long enough. And when people are only living 35 years and they don't get snapped till they're 15 or more, and are passed down knowledge that tries to accrue, it could die off very easily, but it never does. And it holds through all these people. But there could be a convergence idea where people may have come up with the same idea as Orion, as something like that. But it wouldn't be a hunter and a bow. It would be something totally different. And while he is the Hercules type symbol and so on, you can actually see that that is the same guy as a hunter in a lot of cultures that are around the Fertile Crescent and poking out up into the Black Sea type of area, and there are connections there. But I'm talking about connections of people before the last ice age, reaching on over 100,000 years ago. And conceptive, simple things that people had whenever we were what you might think of as Ugg, but we just didn't have anything in front of us to do anything with. We had to develop all of it from nothing. But why would you have convergence in certain places? And why would you have it? So is it brought to those places? And the answer is yes. But does it come from a common stem? And the answer is yes. Well, at one time, was everybody, pretty much on the same page? Is that what we're looking at? And the answer is yes. Well, when did this happen? Well, so far, just this year alone, in the last 3 years, I've been able to show about 50 events of things that are fairly important, like boating and things like a giant boat dock in 8000 BC that's huge. I mean, it's bigger than Fisher's Wharf and everything. Gigantic. Couple of football fields worth, and it's 8,000 years old, and it's down below the water and submerged. Man, because that's whenever the ocean was lower than that, and what we've lost really is these people around the coast. A lot of people have said things like Atlantis is this coastal people that had to move, and then the Ice Age and the change and everything, and they were talking about when they used to live in the area they do now, but it got lost before, and even though they're back now, they talk about this golden age and this thing of this time that happened. Well, listen, there's this good old days of your grandpa. We all can understand that concept, but then also when we look back at history, there's these good old days that we can look back in history, and I try to reveal some of them to you and give a little more illumination to it, and hopefully in your mind make pictures. And I'd love to do collages during speaking of certain things like what I've talked about even so far, and it would give you a better example of what I'm talking about. But sometimes it's better whenever you read the book different than someone else, because you'll find out later that even though that I read the book and you read the book and we've got this picture of the way this town is and the way this girl looked, that it's actually totally different. But it's still the same thing. And so it ends up being variations on a theme. I've used the expression lately of the song remains the same. And so while these people change, and while culture happens much later off of things, the song remains the same. And this shows connections that are almost unattainable by simple convergence, if you will. It doesn't make any sense for it to be possible that this step pyramid is the same angle as this step pyramid, which is the same angle as this step pyramid. It's not just the fact that they're a step pyramid, and yeah, they've got different steps on them. There's 10 in the middle one, and only 6 in this. Oh yeah, well there's reasons and symbolic reasons they had for it. Just because this one has different number of steps doesn't mean a damn thing. Look at the concept here. They're building this pyramid in this symbolic geometric shape for a purpose and a symbol. In the middle one here, we see that they have this doorway, if you look on the right hand side of the building that's up there, and I know it's small, and window on either side. Now, yeah, there's a doorway here, but on this one it has a special doorway. And what's that got to do with it? Well, on this version, I think here it's facing north. But let's see, now that I've given far too much left field before I even got to climb up in the tree, and I'm sitting here talking about it before I even go up into it. But I've talked about some of the tree that we're about to look at. But you know, in South America, there's this one that's very much like this, and it bends at a slightly different angle. And it has snakes on the front of it, and the zigzag that's shown here in the shadow actually one time per year makes this snake look like as the sun comes up, it sets and crawls. Oh, isn't that wicked? And on this certain day, and everybody's like, wow, da da da. You think that that wasn't planned? You think that there wasn't one built like that in some way before, and they found this effect and then found a way to utilize it. You might be able to build a little bitty mound that's no longer visible, that's 1/10 this size or something smaller, and they say that there are other ones, smaller ones inside that, perhaps the ones they started with in a lot of these situations. And you say, well, inside of it, yeah, well, let's look at the step pyramid over here. For one example, for in the very bottom section here, you can see this square that's cut out in it pretty easily. And they've denoted a long time ago that that was just a mastaba. And then they built the step pyramid onto it. So in its origin, all those were mastabas, and then it started step pyramids. And this predates the Great Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, and then the Great Pyramid, and so on. And 3 of them, and they line up to Orion, right? And I haven't even got into this, guys. Oh, man. I, I, I swore I was going to pinch myself to try to keep on track here. But I think I'm on track. I'm still. Let's continue. So that's a mastaba. Ironically, the port going down in and where the body lays and so on exactly mimics the Sumerians and ideals like that. And they found actually in the South American pyramids that are things that are up under it. But it's symbolic up under it, like in the Great Pyramids, there are chambers that are up higher, and they mean certain significant different other things. And if I start to go into that, it's going to be a multi-parter before I even start to go down this page and talk about it. And now I end up walking through an orchard trying to talk to you, and we're going to go back to this tree right here. This commonality, this convergence of things that happened. And for a reason, a long time ago, and nobody even knows why anymore. Yeah, just seems to be oddly lost. Well, let's go ahead and start getting into this, or I'm never going to get there, and I can show you some connections, and we'll talk about things about snakes and its symbology a little bit, symbology of pyramids and other things and symbologies that go with, Egypt and Sumeria and these Hittites and all kinds of people that were connected back in ancient days. But the reason they have the convergence that we're going to show is because before they even had ancient convergence, and then due to contact, it was kept in a similar state. There's no other way to have it come out over a process of over 40,000 years and end up at the same place. For this is not, we look like a vine snake too, in any way. You see what I'm saying? In this, it's by Richard Cesario, and I haven't even looked into his stuff, but apparently I need to. He's made a separate site, and apparently he's an author, and has even gone around to speak at some places. For whenever I first hit the guy's link, it went to a place where it talked as one of the pictures that show up that he was talking in some place in Ontario or Ohio or someplace and everything at some civic center, like whenever they have multiple speakers to do talks like this. I've thought about putting presentations together, but man, if I don't have a slideshow to keep myself going and somebody standing behind the podium pinching me every once in a while, I'm just going to walk off in left field. If you give me a chance to answer questions, I can really go down that and I can hop through subjects like crazy, but then again, does that have any direction? And so have to pretty much work off a concept in a tree, and let's walk up to this tree again. We're back here now, right here at this tree. Okay, and we're going to go with this GodSelf icon. Mysterious GodSelf icons are found worldwide. Is it a lost symbol of an ancient global religion? Well, yeah, it's symbology and it goes with it, and belief systems that now we would probably signify as being religions and call every damn one of them pagan except for our own, of course. But if you can step out yourself for a minute, it'd be the same way. And if you say that we were Star Trek right now and looking back, you would again say it was the same way, and you could see a progression of things. And I've often done that, for I was a kid of this strange space age of Apollo missions and Apollo the gods, and learning about that and this deviation that I'd had and concepts of wanting to be able to go up into space and Icarus and fly into cosmos and things, and these ideas of these solar boats that sail across the Milky Way, and watching little kids shows and everything and cartoons and the Jetsons and Mr. 12 Toes and how he bounces around through the cosmos, if y'all remember what I'm talking about. And ideas like that, and of course Scooby-Doo and mythology and crazy stuff, and I got into D&D and other things. But let's go into this tree here. Significant evidence now exists that ancient cultures worldwide were all connected by a powerful religious symbol, and I tell you it's more than one, which I call the GodSelf icon, that is especially conspicuous among the pyramid cultures. So here's a dual connection that you can't say even Convergence works with. It is in Americas, it is in North Africa and Egypt, and it is in Asia. And what they're not showing you here is that it is up in China, in the Proto-Indo-European lands, and they have pyramids that are very much like this itself. And the Terran Basin mummies that go on, and when we talk about mummies here lately, they leave that out. Only showing a triad here, but you could go a little deeper with it. And now that we found that in Europe and Poland and even on some of the islands out in the Mediterranean that there are pyramids like this, and even on the Canary Islands, you could start to put it together that, hey, here's a whole bunch of people that got this crap going on through this series of time. But again, at that building there, and now we're more at this side of it here looking, but it's the same one that we were looking at. It's got 3 symbolic doors, and it's a door and 2 windows. And there's this door and 2 windows to the temple that goes into it. And in Cambodia and Asia, there's this bigger door and 2 symbolic smaller windows. Now here they show a symbolic holding of 2 snakes. And here is a symbolic showing of holding 2, man, is that bulls? It looks like, kind of, I don't know, goats or bulls, something along that line. And then here is a symbolic holding of something that ends up being the lightning bolt staff. And so, not just in making this one simple connection that we're making here with this triptology, this ideal of 3 doorways and triad situation that's going on, you know, but an idea of snakes. And you can take each one of these 3 and show that that symbology is still there in ancient cultures. For if we go from the right to the left again and we look at this storm god situation in Indra, then we can see a storm god of the Greeks and Zeus, and how he uses that same looking firebolt and lightning bolt, if you will, the same symbology that Baal has, the same symbology that's carried all the way through and even seen in people like Thor. And yet it's the same symbology, and it goes with each other in their ideals and aspects. Not only the Proto-Indo-European languages, but that comes much later. For there's an ancient symbology underlying here that goes back, as I'm saying again, up to 40,000 years ago. And there's this master of beasts that go on, where your character is between 2 ideas. Hercules was between 2 pillars. But there are also Gilgamesh, and he's holding on to lions like they're cats, like they're nothing, is the master of beasts. But we're looking at a bunch of these pictures of this, and later we'll look at even more of them. I can guarantee this is going to go to a part 2 eventually, because I can't stop. So it'll be in your top left-hand corner, coming up at around a 45-minute mark, and we'll try to make this an hour and a half or less. The second part won't go on. It'll be a cleaning up and a more discussion. If I can't get this done in between now and then, let me go. Let's see if we can do it. So there's Master of Beasts, but then there's this idea of holding 2 snakes. And I've made the video at the end of last year and start of this year of this Conan and connection of him in the ancient movies and 2 snakes coming together, and this symbology of this snake that comes together. Ancient Greek beliefs of how a snake mates with each other, the omphalos and the egg, and how it goes together. And it cross-linked on my hard drive along with a bunch of videos that I've made, and I wrote it down on a tablet. And due to the fact that I'm just pissed off and in angst, I've gone back and I've only done, man, look, if I look at it here, I've only done 2 out of about 14 that I have to redo. Yaha. Anyhow, this symbolic snakes that you can see even from North Africa and Carthage, and goddesses there that are holding on to them, and Tanit and things, but that rolls all the way up through Europe and Proto-Indo-Europeans, all the way down. You can see it in India, places across the Orient even. And this snake idea, and the snake has a special symbology. And so just a minute ago I said in things, and this is what that things is. For snakes were looked at as being somehow God's perfect weird creature. To us it was a weird evolved thing. It didn't even need legs. And the strangest thing is that it can grow throughout its whole life, and nothing else in front of us does that very much. Everything reaches a height and then goes to maturity and then goes to an old age. But a snake never looks like that. For whenever it gets old and gray and its eyes start to get cataract, it sheds and makes a new skin and then grows even larger, and it's even brand new. And some kind of perpetual idea. And people found, there's this one old story, and I've said this in a couple of different videos, about they talked about this explorer back in the day wanting to find this place. And so I don't understand how it worked out, but in showing him there, they found an urn. Whenever he looked into the urn, it had a snake that was still alive and in a few sheds. And the guy freaked out. He tried to leave the man there and stuff, and you know, he got freaked out of the whole deal that there was this, you know, snake that went along with it, and he'd been there that long. But who knows how long that snake had been in that jar. Well, it couldn't have been 1,500 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years or anything, but you know, what was this? Well, he had found that they had been tomb robbing, and that's where the guy knew that area was. So I don't know, maybe this was a booby trap for somebody in case somebody came in. Lord knows how it worked out. But I remember the guy in the ancient, you know, and they get scared, think that the curse of the mummy was happening, the curse of the pyramids. But there's this triptych temple thing that goes on, and there's this GodSelf icon, and then there's more connections. There's a master of beasts, there's this thunder god type situation, and this snake worship is some of the ancient and most ancient of worship. But if we look back to the most ancient that we have that's really into the cycle, it's really a sun worship, and all the celestial things go off of that, with the moon being its counterpart, and it works off of that. Night and day, everything. Sun come up, moon go down, world spin round and round. Right? So in my 2011 book, or his 2011 book, Written in Stone, I reveal how these pyramid cultures all employed the same three-door triptych temple pattern. Another discovery that I announced concerns GodSelf icon, an image depicting a central figure, a hero or a god, facing forward and holding either hand parallel objects or animals. And so this is Master of Beast, Master of Snakes, lightning bolts, whatever, but it's the same symbology. My new book, The Missing Link, shows more than 500 spectacular images of evidence of the central role of the GodSelf icon played in civilizations as diverse as Egypt, India, China, Persia, Mexico, Peru, and Colombia, and even ancient Europe. And while you could easily in your mind make the connection of Proto-Indo-Europeans, and if we just rolled it back another age and realized that during the Ice Age height, that everything was encroached down and they had lost all of that land, the sea was much lower and everybody was more towards the Middle Earth or Mediterranean area, that whenever they expounded out of that great catastrophe, that they all had more of a common knowledge. And isn't that pretty easy to come up with? There was something I was going to say at the very start, and I never even got to it, by the way, but hopefully I'll get back to it, for it's not able to be plugged in right now, but I'll try to get back to the concept, maybe at the summarization at the end. But you can see Egypt, India, China, Persia, and what do those things have connected to it? Proto-Indo-Europeans and people that were known as Aryans. Now the swastika is hooked up to that, and we can't really refer to that anymore, for it's bad, because Germany took upon this concept knowing that they had come from this ancient lineage. And looking back on it now, if we've gotten far enough away from it, and literally threw a fit and tried to go and busting through all of Europe and everything and set things back in a way that they thought was right, and basically dismiss the Jewish biblical account and stuff and the things that had happened to them. But they were hosting the Jewish people at that time. But it's not their symbol. And sure, the Germanic people had that symbol, but so did Europeans and the people that fought against them. In fact, all the cultures that they fought and fought against them at one time in that area had those symbols. But that symbol is in the North American continent too, just like some of these other symbols we're looking at. And I tell you, the ancient North Americans had it, and New Mexico used to have it on their signs and everything. I have a little teapot thing that has it as a symbol on the side of it that my parents got from, I believe it was on a Navajo trip that we went through in northern New Mexico and up into all the way through Nevada. And my mom thought we were probably going to go to Vegas and everything, but no. That wouldn't have been on a family trip, would it? Anyhow, my dad was way into Old West and things like that, so we went to Dodge City, Kansas, and all the different areas and everything, and OK Corral and blah, blah, blah. And we also liked a lot of nature reserves and going into caverns, and Carlsbad Caverns and things like that. So it was neat for us when we were kids going through it. I've been able to take my kids through a few of things, but I really wish I was able to even do it even more myself now. It seems like it's a different world. It really does. So here we can see ideas, but some oddities that are in it here that we see. Here's the snake idea, and then here's the snake idea, and then here's the snake idea. But then we also see this guy's got foxes, and that's in ancient Egypt. So you can see some of these areas, certain things that are going on are putting it out, and this is the master of certain things. So you wonder if this people have become master of electricity way back when. And the ancient theorists go crazy on that, but had they become master of snakes? Had they started envenomating weapons? And does this indicate that in any way? Or that they were using medicines? Or that they had found the secret to immortality by their religion, and that they are exuding it out openly only to people that know. Maybe it has more to do with all of the above. For if you look at this foxes, what's strange is the tail of them is bristled up. But it's bristled up, and a lot of people said, well, that's a scorpion, because there's their tail that's right there. And it's not actually like a fox. And there's the tail sticking up, and there's the tail sticking up. And he's got a scorpion for some reason. And this one's got a scorpion for some reason. And man, doesn't it also go with zodiacs? And another convergence can be made where people seem to have similar, just dot-to-dot pictures, which could end up being any animal. But most everybody's got Leo and the lion and Taurus, the bull, and we can find cave depictions going back to where they have it declamated in Orion, and here's the Pleiades and Taurus, and I've shown this in a few videos. So how far does this stuff go back? Well, at least there, at least to 30,000 BC, but I'm telling you it goes back over 40. And lion symbology, where we see a statuette of a man with a lion head that looks very much like Egypt. And you find it all over the place too, for we're looking at Peru and Indonesia, giraffe cultures. Even Nigeria later ends up getting something that looks just like it, and they try to catch in. There's Persia, there's the Minoans, and strangely, I know it's small in here, but there are other connections that you can make too. For India here is showing an idea of tigers, but that looks exactly like the ones that work with lions on the other side of the Tigris River, showing a declamation of tigers and lions that no longer exist anywhere except for in Africa anymore, but there used to be lions across that entire area there. And you wonder why they have that iconography all the way up into Europe, whenever they didn't really have them. And in ancient times they did, but the people that came into Europe there and went up to greener pastures used to have this similar iconography, and it carries through in certain ideas and flags and symbologies and things like that, like unicorns, which here in Persia, which has some of that ancient tales, and there's this very tall man holding on to winged horses by holding on to their unicorn. But oddly, this goes with one that I just made recently, a video that has swans going with it, and this Mother Goose concept that y'all didn't watch very much of because it's got less than 100 views on it. And I've got a couple of videos like that, and the star disc, the Nebra star disc that I put out, it doesn't seem like I got any views. And I don't know why, YouTube has got this thing where it's not even putting out algorithms. I got over 4,500 subscribers, gained 2,000 since the first of the year, and I'm not getting 2,000 people's response. I'm not getting, wow, I'm getting 1/10 of that or less. And but let's just go on. But the swan symbology that in there shows to somehow go back possibly to 420,000 years. And I've got another video ready to go out. I don't know if it'll go out before this or not, about a swan flute that they have. It's a swan arm bone flute at 40,000 years old. It shows a connection with this idea of these buzzards, and they take people up into heaven, and a swan being one of the most elegant of these birds that are like a duck or a goose, and a goose that lays the golden egg, and this concept that goes back much farther than a fairy tale, which is brought out of a concept from something from way back when. But you can see it in ancient Greece, you can see it in India, Peru, Nigeria, Egypt, North America, Sumeria, Bolivia, and this concept that's there, but it gets worse and it gets deeper. Just as the crucifix symbol unites millions of Christians under one universal religion, so the GodSelf icon symbol did the same for ancient ancestors. And there's some odd ones that are shown here too, but here's the same type of symbology but with weapons. Here's one with that's from Afghanistan, but it has a Persian twist, Indian Persian twist of Afghanistan, and Proto-Indo-European twist, and it has what's called Kairin, and they actually are horses but drawn in a mythical way, apparently to a people that hadn't seen them quite yet. Like in China, and the lines that they show or really show up more as doggish in situations. It's odd. But then this GodSelf icon, even in Egypt in ancient times, that are shown, and it is the ankh of a person, which makes sense and shows a Tanit connection. If you just make this bottom wider like a dress, it becomes a symbol that looks just like women's bathroom. And we still use these ideograms to this day. It's amazing. So many things are in your face and you don't even know it. But oddly, I've always looked at this, and this looks like pterodactyl heads. And are they going back to a time of pterodactyls here? What is this concept? I'm going to leave that alone for that's just... So here, even during sacrifices, in this concept of what's going on in Colombia, in ancient Colombia, but in Peru, the same idea of tigers and lions, in India, and in China, also snakes going on, and this horned idea of becoming the master of beasts. But in Lebanon, again, the golden geese situation. Yeah, and it's dueled up in this master of things. Well, so what is this showing? And she's got triangle ankhs in her hands. What? Yeah, like in the symphony, there's a person that ding plays the triangle, but it's a chime. It's a bell. Ding. Hopefully I'm making a few dings here with this. For that she is with a bird, but then you see a person as a bird and holding up a sword in one hand and some wheat in another. And this is in Italy. Now, I know these pictures are small in here, but we've ditched pretty much all this idea of snakes and so on and everything. You don't see it so much anymore, but these buzzards and snakes, well, Egypt had them right on their cowling and stuff, and it's just in your face. But more than that, all of this is disintegrated away, but we kept one thing. We had to pick one thing we had to keep. Which is the one we kept? Well, we kept that one that's there, I'm showing now, where people become angels. For that seems to have been the oldest of things that everybody had, of how these ancient birds and buzzards of vultures take people up into the sky from earliest of caveman times, and it carries its way through to this day. And you can get your wings, and ding ding ding, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. I've heard that before somewhere. We're coming up on that season. But you can see this Master of Beasts going again in Nigeria in that later depiction, but also in Spain in ancient times, and plants that are being held in certain ways. And you see this in Egypt too, and showing you that they have a master over planting and agriculture, and they've become a master of their surroundings. But it shows in so many places, in ancient Iraq, in ancient Greece. And yeah, I'm going to look into Cesario. I'm sure he's going to have a few connections that I'm stumbling right past because I'm too busy climbing up all the branches of the tree. And somehow, because I'm on this side of the tree right now, I can't talk about the other, but you do see me quite often jump around like a monkey. So parallel art and architecture and antiquity, pyramid building, corbel arches, mummification even, which is seen in South America, which is seen all the way up in the Tarim Basin mummies and stuff, which has been found in Egypt, of course, and in places. And the idea of a sarcophagus, which really is, sarco is flesh and phagus is to eat. And so this idea of a flesh eater, used in a box later, but at first it was birds. And that goes back to the earliest times, but we've seen definite connections to that and how it changes over time. These things always interested this guy, and they always interest me, so much that I began traveling at a young age in an effort to find and examine these parallels, as well as discover many more parallels that I could find. I wasn't able to travel as much, but I was able to go there through literature and so on, and stand on the back of giants and peer over their shoulder. And while they were busy talking about some crap that they have an agenda for, I was noticing a lot of things that a lot of people don't notice. Man, this is coming up on part 2, and I'm not going to make it, so we're going to keep it at this picture here as we go into his next level step of it. But here it is again, showing you that same connection. And from the Americas, the triptych doorway, 1, 2, 3, the Master of Beasts. Now, said by different people at different times in the Americas, that the basic concept of the Maya religion and that of the Mesoamerica in general is harmony of opposites and some type of yin and yang. In Egypt itself, in northern Africa, the deeply rooted Egyptian tendency is to understand the world as a series of pairs of contrasts and balanced and unchanging equilibrium, and yin and yang, as in the sun sets and set takes over through the apex snake and it rolls around again in cycles, a balancing change, and there's good with bad, but it's never looked at as bad, and you don't have all good because you can't have anything if you don't compare it to it. But not that they're embracing bad in any way. And as we get better and gooder, what's considered as bad is left in the past, and it's less and less bad, more and more good, and there's still yin and yang. Egyptian thought is that a totality comprises of opposites. In Asia, in their